Hey guys, before we get into the main content of this video, I'd like to make it very clear that this video is addressing the changes between two ships and the environments they play between, irrespective of what nations they reflect. This game is a game. It tries to be based on historical accuracy as much as possible, but at the end of the day, it is a video game and has to be balanced accordingly. That being said, let's begin. If you haven't caught my prior videos, the American CV line underwent massive changes in Update 6.14. These changes were made to bring the CVs back in line with their Japanese counterparts. For the majority of the tiers, the balancing was well constructed. However, one particular ship may have been just a little overbuffed. Tier 10 Midway saw its prior loadout options removed in favor of a 2-2-2 setup. The fighters remained the same, the torpedo bombers were reduced down to a Tier 8 variation. The dive bombers remained the same, however, there was an option to include AP bombers. Okay, so that's all well and dandy. So why would they change the Midway so soon after it just received this major change? Well, the issue of course comes down to balancing, and more specifically, balancing against the Hakuryu. Let's look at the ships side by side to get a better idea of the issue. This is going to be based off a fully upgraded ship. Let's look at the hangar capacity for the Midway versus the Hakuryu. The Midway gets 136 planes, divided into 45 fighters, 44 torpedoes, and 47 dive bombers. In comparison, the Hakuryu only gets 100 planes, divided 25, 34, and 41. From this you can see that the Midway has almost double the amount of fighters that the Hakuryu does. Not only does it get 20 more fighters, the American fighter squads are in groups of 6 or 7, whereas the Japanese are in groups of 4 or 5. In a 2-on-2 situation, this is 12 fighters versus 8 fighters, or with air supremacy, 14 fighters versus 10 fighters. Now yes, there is ways to negligate this indifference between fighters, such as front strafing, back strafing, avoiding strafes, and using your anti-air. However, you can only do that so much, and you only have so many opportunities to get this right. With the Hakuryu's limited 25 bank of fighters, you pretty much have to get it right every single time. And that's just dealing with the fighters. You still have to go and work on the Midway striking craft. This is where the issue comes from. The Midway is just too good at killing the Hakuryu's fighters off. What would happen in games since that patch would be the Midway would focus down the fighters. As soon as the Hakuryu is out of fighters, the Midway would then focus down the strike craft. Suddenly the Hakuryu has no planes left, and then the Midway would bring out all of its strike craft. While yes, the Midway strike craft are under-tiered, when you have reserves of over 40 in each of them, it doesn't matter if you're losing 3 to 4 to 5 planes per strike, because you have the repertoire to refill them. And you know, the Hakuryu isn't there to take them down anymore. What the change will entail is moving the stock fighters, which were Tier 9, back to Tier 8. And then moving the upgraded fighters, which were Tier 10, dropping those back to Tier 9. Now, I've seen in multiple different sources the backlash and the trivialization of the change that Wargaming is making in this area, saying that they don't think it's right, but I disagree. Let me explain why. Firstly, changing the fighters tier down to Tier 9 is only going to affect how anti-air affects them. On a one-on-one engagement with Hakuryu fighters, the Midway fighters are still going to be stronger, particularly with the use of Dogfighting Expert that gives that 10% extra damage per level tier difference. So the main thing is, so long as you are being mindful of where the enemy defensive fires are, where the enemy anti-air banks are, you relatively aren't going to see that much difference in your play. Your fighters are still going to be as strong as what they were previously against the Hakuryu. You just got to be a little bit more cautious of where you're engaging. On the flip side, however, this gives the Hakuryu just a little bit more chance and a little bit more maneuverability using their team's anti-air, so that they still have the opportunity to do some strikes and some damage without just getting blown out of the air straight away. Now, just to head it off before it gets brought up, yes, I am a Japanese CV player. It is my preferred nation. However, if the shoe was on the other foot and I was seeing that the Haku in 99% of the situations were just completely shutting down the Midway without a chance, I would still advocate a change that could be considered a nerf, so that there is a rebalance and there is a challenge between the classes to gain the air superiority. It's no fun if it's that easy. For those who are still saying or still think it is a nerf to the Midway, I'll be straight out forward with you. I played best part of 40 games in my Midway over the weekend trying to find a Hakuryu. When I did find that Hakuryu, I was still very capable of mitigating its plane and strength and holding air superiority.